It takes you away. It definitely does. It takes you away from a hopeful streak of quality guest-written episodes, but 3 out of 4 isn't bad. There is some good to take from this episode, good ideas, but just not executed very well. I've said it before on Ups and Downs, and I'll say it again, all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. It takes you away. Actually, it takes you either side might work better, as episode 9 has split opinion straight down the middle. We're back in 2018. We're in Denmark. Why Denmark? No idea. Did the TARDIS take them here? Not a clue. After a brief mention of a future where the sheep of Earth renegotiate their place with humans, ending in some kind of bloodbath somehow. Look, there's a house. Nice spot, Ryan. I see the speak and spell show and tell approach to your dialogue hasn't gone anywhere. Then the Doctor reads into this observation a little too much. A house in Norway in winter with a chimney but no smoke. Sounds fishy, right? Graham pipes up and does his usual thing of seeing straight through the bullshit. It could be out. Nah, best we go and investigate. But there could be out. Oh, fine, let's go. The line that was annoyingly omitted from that scene. It's boarded up, but someone's inside. The Doctor breaks and enters. Not literally, of course. The Sonic does the work of the only 3 bolts between them and their mystery. And after some digging, they find a blind girl, Hannah, hiding in a wardrobe. Why? Because of the monsters. No parents around either. Mum is dead and Dad nipped out 4 days ago. Weird. Ryan then jumps on the assumption that her dad just abandoned her, packed up and left. Even after some context about why Hannah and her dad are in this secluded cabin, nope, he's convinced he's done a runner and he's being an utter bastard about it. I'm sure this is some kind of defense mechanism. He doesn't want to shy away from the fact since this kind of scenario has affected his life so much. He's still lashing out though, and it's toward a genuinely terrified blind girl. Wow. Ryan has been pretty one-dimensional throughout this series, but this is the first time I've really seen his lines give some colour. Not brightly coloured, joyful lines like the ones you hear every time Graham opens his lovely mouth, more muddy and unwelcoming colours, but still a welcome change in my opinion. This is where my first fork in the road comes with this episode. Does Ryan's malicious approach to his interpretation of the situation earn an up or a down? Up for his sudden burst of, well, life in his words, or down since he's just being a rude bellend? You'll have to let me know in the comments as to where you stand on this, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to give him 1 of each, because I feel like this scene equally outputs my argument for up and the 1 for down. Plus, I don't want these to be zeros for too long. Team TARDIS and Hannah lock themselves back in the house to keep themselves safe from the supposed threat outside. As the Doctor tells Graham to keep a lookout from upstairs, a noise startles him. He turns around to see his reflection in the mirror has disappeared. Sort of a standard trope, but when I see weird mirror, I see portal. It made a lot of noise and gave out a lot of light since Graham poked it, so yeah, I'm assuming it's a portal. After some usual Sonic buzzing, yeah, it's definitely a portal. Can I just say, I love my Sonic, the Doctor says. Yeah, after the amount of times it's helped you through literally everything this series, no shit, Doctor. So even though she doesn't like the look of this creepy mirror, the Doctor takes Graham and Yaz with her through this portal and leaves Ryan with Han. Maybe as some means of hoping Ryan apologises or as some sort of punishment for being an absolute twat earlier. But before she goes, she writes something on the wall, saying he should assume that Hannah's dad is dead. Then she lies to Hannah about saying it's a map of the house, and then gallivants off through the portal. When Hannah's character was introduced, I was sure there'd be something included in this episode to play up to her being blind. This was the first and really only time that happened, but I felt they could have used a seed that was planted earlier on to greater effect when relating to Hannah interacting with the world around her. Why wasn't the mirror always broken? She would have never noticed it. She's a clever girl. She sensed her imposter mother, spoilers, I'll get to that later, and the fact that Doctor didn't draw a map of the house on the wall. She was writing. But there is one thing she surely couldn't have sensed. Her reflection, or at least lack thereof. I feel like it would have made everything seem that much more mysterious in the grand scheme of things, and if, in the mirror universe, the Doctor and co suddenly saw their reflections, that, moment would have been brilliant. But yeah, tangent or rant over. Rantgent? Rantgent. Copyright Rich Hudson. The Doctor, Yaz and Graham find themselves in some sort of a cave. After tying some string to a rock to find their way back, our team find themselves in the presence of a thing called Ribbons. Someone that looks like the unholy love child of a three-way between a Sycorax, a Grask and Freddy Krueger. This guy lives on trading X and Y for some Z. You need information? Give me the Sonic. Payment on delivery. Sure, follow me to Missing Daddy. Why is this guy here? Who is he, really? Why is he so concerned about moths? Oh, they're flesh-eating moths. Sure, this place isn't too nice, is it? Ribbons cuts the Doctor's string, puts a knife to Graham's throat, but what for? Just the Sonic the Doctor still hasn't given to him. Apparently. A swarm of moths turn up and Ribbons runs for the Sonic and he gets eaten to bits. Is that a saying, eaten to bits? Anyway, he dies. And since he serves quite literally no purpose other than telling the Doctor this is an anti-zone, he's getting a down. He was merely a vessel for exposition. The Doctor and co run for the hills, or mirrors in this case, away from the rabid moths, only to end up back in the cabin. But everything's different. The furniture has moved around and it's brighter outside. What gives? Meanwhile, Ryan and Hannah are still hiding from the monster. Ryan locked the room containing the mirror, much to Hannah's dismay, and now they're double-checking the house is secure. Ryan comes across a cable that leads him outside to a speaker, playing the monster noises. Turns out Hannah's dad barricaded her in her own home so he could piss off through the mirror to the opposite universe. So Ryan was kind of half right. Her dad was a prick and bailed. Back with the Doctor in the Mirrorverse, they find Eric quite happily cooking dinner for himself and his supposedly dead wife. He can't bring Trina back through the mirror for some reason, so he's camping out here for a bit, keeping his daughter occupied on the other side by barricading her in the house and making her absolutely terrified. If this isn't trashy parenting, I don't know what is. After Ryan returns from finding the speakers, Hannah manages to knock him out cold with a door. Sure, reopen the mirror room and head across the anti-zone herself. Back in the Mirrorverse, someone is out in the garden. We've seen the dead seemingly walking around carefree already. Surely it could happen again. Well, it did. It's Grace, Ryan's gran, Graham's wife. Graham is quite rightly in bits, but he's still pretty much seeing straight through her. It can't be her, she's dead. Graham wants proof that she's real. He asks her to tell him a trivial story about a frog necklace he's currently wearing, and she tells him the story beat for beat, and he's convinced. Quite rightly too. Surely an omission from the story would be quite a red flag, but she's bang on. At this point, the wheels are turning in the Doctor's head. Yaz is doing her usual thing of just spouting triggers into the Doctor's mind, and it causes her to speak of a bedtime story her 5th of 7 grandmothers told her. The Solitract was an entity, a living, conscious, sentient universe, unable to exist among every other building block of existence because it couldn't. So it lived alone, isolated on its own dimensional plane. It's kind of sad, really. The only thing is, the Doctor recited this tale out of sort of pure coincidence, and the fact that this myth or fairy tale was the actual thing that was happening felt a little too convenient, no? Anyway, Graham is now convinced that Grace is actually Grace, but is rudely interrupted by the Doctor since she believes this to be a trap. The Solitract is baiting in people with sentimental objects, but their universe cannot exist with the building blocks from the other universe in there, as the tale says, so all will go Pete Tong if they don't get out of there. Graham is adamant he's not leaving without Grace, but this Solitract interpretation of Grace makes one grave mistake when Graham discovers that Ryan is trapped in the anti-zone and is definitely about to be eaten by flesh-eater moths. She doesn't care. Graham sees straight through this, says the magic words and is flung back into the anti-zone. The same happened with Hannah when she could tell her mother wasn't really her mother, and the same with Eric when it was all spelled out to him. Escaping to the anti-zone, back in the real universe, Hannah and her dad are back together. Lovely. Graham's understanding of the reality of the situation from the off gets top marks from me. He is a clever guy. He didn't just do the naive companion just taking everything at face value thing. He may have stumbled a little since this Grace was, at first, pretty convincing, but he picked up on the stumble and said goodbye to Grace. Again. He may not have proper closure on Grace, but damn, he is a strong man. Up for Graham this week. I've been tempted to give Graham ups every week for just being there, but this week was particularly lovely. The thing is, the Solitract didn't want a husband out of this in both Eric and Graham's cases since it was masquerading as Trina and Grace, respectively. It wanted a universe. The Doctor felt she could offer this to it through the stories of her travels. Saving Eric from remaining trapped on this side, this Solitract plane could stably hold at least one being from the real universe. Everything came to a bright close on this side of things. Quite literally, this shot of the light pouring through the paneling of the wood gets an up from me. Honestly, it was breathtaking. So I do have one question about this mirror universe, tempting people in with something they've always wanted, like their dead significant other being alive again. Why is it then, when the Doctor, Yaz and Graham arrived, Grace appeared then, but nothing did for Yaz and the Doctor? I'm not entirely sure what Yaz's bait might have been. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you think that could have been. But why didn't the Doctor see something? Rose. Gallifrey up in the sky, not full of evil Time Lords. Some people even said Susan. Anyway, it's just the Doctor and the Solitract now, but what form has it taken? It doesn't need to tempt the Doctor in, she's here. So what does it look like? Well, to echo Grace's conversation with Graham earlier, it's a frog with Grace's voice. What the actual f***? I wasn't wholly convinced about the whole thing throughout pretty much the entirety of this episode, but this put the icing on the cake. They could have done anything, but they did this. It took me right out of it. Other viewers have said they were laughing so hysterically they missed pretty much the entirety of this scene. Surrealism for the sake of surrealism is just dumb, and this talking frog was about as dumb as it gets. Down. Absolutely down. I was genuinely sat with my mouth agape. What on earth was going on? The Doctor ends up not being able to stay in the Solitract universe by some, convenient means, so the Solitract essentially lets her go. Bit weird that. As the episode closes, Ryan speaks to Graham about the fact he saw Grace. This leads Ryan to calling him Grandad for the first time. Even though we knew this was eventually coming, it was still quite a surprise. It gets an up since that bridge has finally been crossed, but I feel like it could have been done so much better. This finally comes about because Yaz told Ryan that Graham saw Grace again. Sure, Ryan and Graham have been getting closer throughout the series, but there wasn't that tipping point I was expecting for Ryan. If I had the ability to use the building blocks of this episode to lead to this exchange, I would have put Ryan in Graham's place on the other side and left Graham with Hannah. Ryan would have seen his Gran, which I feel like would have been a much more emotional moment since we've already seen Graham with his vision of Grace. And in this Mirrorverse, Grace tells Ryan just how much he means to Graham, making him appreciate the effort that Graham does make with him even more. All of this leads to the Grandad line, and I'd be a blubbering wreck on the floor. In how it really played out, I was genuinely touched, but then I zoned back in again and realised I'd just seen the Doctor speaking to a frog. Overall then, this episode wasn't absolutely god-awful. It's not the Saranga conundrum, but I do feel like it could have been a little more focused. The concept of a being inhabiting its own plane of existence, feeling so lonely it reaches out to our universe for company, irrelevant of how much devastation it might cause, is honestly one of the most unique and original concepts Doctor Who has ever seen. And I love it. So it's an up for that. But like I said, there was some unnecessary baggage lobbed onto it all that was just off. The anti-zone, conceptually interesting. Ribbons already has it down for being a mere vessel for exposition. The moths, they were only there as some physical threat that was present throughout the majority of the episode, way before the existence-breaking revelation about the Solitract. The existence of the anti-zone was quite literally the pointless bit in the middle of the two universes, so I kind of wish they both figuratively and literally trimmed it out and pushed the two halves together. As for the frog, well, maybe the Solitract could have taken on the form of the Doctor herself, which could have been interesting. It wanted a universe, and the Doctor embodied that in herself. Why not assume the form of the thing you've always desired, to feel even closer to that goal? Plus, I'd have loved to have seen the Doctor come face to face with herself. It's always fun when that happens in Who. But that's what I thought about It Takes You Away. What did you think of this episode? For something that has supposedly split opinion down the middle, I'm rather on the fence about it, but I'm more leaning towards the, I wouldn't say this is a wholly good episode. It's like a 5.5 or a 6 out of 10 for me. If you loved it, that's great, I won't take that from you. If you hated it, well, that's your opinion. Next week brings the series finale, and it's Chibnall back in the hot seat. Our minuscule trailers for the Battle of Ranskor Av Kolos look pretty blooming great in my opinion. I know that voice, the Doctor says. Could it be Tim Shaw? Who knows? Don't forget to subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more film, TV and other random stuff content, and whatculture.com has everything you've ever wanted embodied in a physical form in a way that won't fall apart if you all flock to it. I'm Rich, and I'll see you for the final episode of Series 11 next week.